Hey, good listeners. Shaunga here, your friendly neighborhood spider woman. Welcome back to my open classroom. First things first, I need to address you're seeing my screen here, but I need to address the tabs. Okay, look, don't get it twisted. Okay, this is quality daddy time is Shadow the Eagle, and these are my two babies. So don't get any ideas over here. And then the other link, the other tab over there is yeah, I want to watch that Lilith Fair documentary later. Don't judge me. Okay, so in this open classroom, we're going to talk about what happens when we win and what happens when we lose. Now, in this class, in this video, I'll be talking about the impact that money has on friendships, on intimacy, on liberation movements, and what changes when we change what we do with money. And so this is really the spirit behind this big research project that I've been building, which is organizing a village artist grant funding system. Um, and in this video, yeah, I'm also going to talk about what you see on the screen here is when we organize via bodies of wisdom and development, and I'll take you through what that means. We're going to address this major problem, this major issue and concern of overwhelm that many of us are feeling. Um, but first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through how a money moving workshop works in this village artist grant system. And then we'll go into a couple alternate timeline stories and what happens when this system fails, what happens when it wins. And I just, I didn't plan on talking about this today, but it's what came through. And as I was sort of channeling that, I saw the impact, that this, when we lose, how that impacts our friendships, our intimacy, our movements. And when we win, um, how does it positively impact our movements, friendships, and intimacies? So, if you're just tuning in, I dropped a full medicine bundle, full introduction to my vision on this Village Artist Grant system. So, if you really want to understand how I'm visioning it, I would go through the free bundle. It's on my website, and so I'll link below. And you can also check out my Instagram posts at Otherworldly Giants to get a sense of it. But the basic principle behind this system is that we, as in consenting sovereign individuals, can become each other's public funding system. And so in the free entire, the full introduction, I take you through all of that, how that works, and what happens when I work with an associate producer to create a beautiful offering for the village that we can then activate in a certain way to organize the money that comes in through that offering into creating a giant village artist grant that we can then split into many pieces of the pie that many people can receive and enjoy and benefit from. And the people who give can really feel like they're a part of something beautiful. And we can make a real tangible impact on each other's lives and on the matters that we really care about right now. So, the first, so here I have my, this is my mad spiritual scientist board if you haven't seen it before. Um, but I'm going to take you right here. First of all, we are the first big event that we're going to host to bring in this village grant is scheduled, yay, on November 30th, 2025. So this is called Trans a Livelihood, and this is a safe passage ceremony for our beloveds in body and spirit. And yeah, that sounds exciting, right? I'm going to tell you more details about that later. But over the next 2 months, I'm going to be inviting people not just into the event, but into the principles behind the event that result in creating this Village Artist Grant. And so together we'll go on that journey, and we'll practice it in real time and we'll see it unfold in real time. And then at the event, I'll be able to split the the harvest. And so that's where I have right here at the end of the event, we'll get to celebrate the harvest And we'll see through this organizing system all the things that we'll be able to do when we split the pot between incredible projects and programs, the livelihood of cherished humans, essential service providers, students, people who are leaners, learners, and young people, on the ground crisis work, mystery schools, apothecaries, Black and Indigenous land back promises, beloved teachers, elders, and animal companions. Okay. So that's going to happen on November 30th. And so the next 2 months are about that. But then a couple days ago, I realized what I have to do in order to plan for that success, because I'm planning for this success. Um, I need to resource myself now. And it was like, oh, look at this. Look at the most important thing that I forgot to talk about thus far in the introduction. Um, which is, one of the most important things is disability justice and this alchemy of ancestor healing and disability justice, which is a realm of scholarship and lived experience that I steward, and principles around, disability justice to the front, access funding to the front. Okay. And this is really, by this this is what we need to do in order to make this whole event possible, right? So this is the principle of like, if you're wanting to host and steward something, if you want to provide something, you need to be resourced yourself, and your accessibility needs need to be met in order for you to provide anything. And so that's the number one principle that we're working with here. Um, so what I realized I needed to do is open the first money moving workshop portal today, October 4th. And so we're going to be generating this portion of the grant first, and then that'll move into the big event that we're doing for November 30th. Um, so really the simplicity of how this whole thing works, right, is instead of a regular ticket price for an event, we're asking folks to sign up for the event if you want to come, but offer a number from your field of generosity, from your realm of generosity. And so, what is a generous number for you to offer back to our collective and personal desires to return to a thriving village way of life? For some people, that a generous amount might be, $25. For some people, it might be 5,000. So that's the experiment, is that I want to see what happens when people give from that place. And I'm banking on those numbers adding up to what we all need at this time to really fully resource ourselves, including myself. And so the same deal here. I'm opening a portal for people to offer accessibility funds right away, to help me steward this as yeah, the accessibility funding part of this grant. And so we're saying the same thing. I'm going to be offering just, a regular PayPal link um, to offer from your field of generosity. And there's also an option too of investing in our community garden, which is available to folks who go through the full free medicine bundle, and then you can go through the entry portal there. And then that way you make yourself eligible for gifts and grants that come out of the overflow of my pot, when we generate the full grant. Okay. So between today, October 4th, and October 17th, my goal is to reach 500 people who can offer something to this specific cause. And if we can get an average of $100, then I will feel really well supported in my accessibility grant for this 2 month period. Um, yeah. And so let me say this part. What I wrote here, healers, service providers, community caregivers, We need to stop swallowing every bill and compromising our health for the sake of community accessibility. And when we do this, we help us all heal from the epidemic of trans and femme suicide. Um, and so I want to say there's a very short leash between these two paragraphs. And I have compromised, my well-being many times to make healing work or liberation work accessible, and many of us have. And there is a very short leash between, doing that, um, amongst a village that kind of encourages you to do that. And, people feel used, right? People feel resentful. People feel like they always have to give and they won't get community support in return. That's why, from personal experience, a lot of people walk that line or cross that edge because they're like, fuck this, fuck community. People feel exploited. People feel overburdened and like their resources are constantly, being taken away from them. So a lot of femmes and trans people feel that way. So there's a very, very short leash between these two things. And I know a lot of spiritual folks will say, well, that's on you, don't give at the expense of yourself. If you don't have something to provide, don't give it. And I mean, I get it. I get it. You're preaching to the choir. That is, what I say all the time. But also the reality is in this current climate, especially over the last, 15, 20 years, um, the reality is a lot of our medicine would not have survived if we hadn't taken, you know, if we hadn't taken it upon ourselves to just put the medicine out there, no matter even if we didn't have all the support we needed to do it. That's the reality. We just had to take care of business, you know? um, even without adequate support. And if you know about that, then you know about that. It's just, how it's been. And so a lot of people are really, really depleted from that and burnt out from that. Um, and, we live in conditions that push, caregivers, parents, trans people, and femmes into these situations where our backs are legitimately up against the wall. And we need collective solutions, not just, put we're doing the same thing, right? We're putting all the onus on healers to fix the problem. Again, by just, you fix your boundaries, right? Solid boundaries of individuals alone will not fix this collective epidemic that then feeds into this deeper epidemic of not wanting to be alive, of suicide, right? Because even while prioritizing um my boundaries, what I'm really craving is to return to a collectively healed way of life. And that's what makes me want to be alive, right? Is that collectivity. So making sure that we are taking care of our stewards and our healers and our providers, that is a disability justice issue, right? It's a spiritual and mental health issue. And so, yeah, yesterday I realized that I have to plan for this up front. And so when I'm asking for that, 500 times 100, this is, how it's going to break down. And I'm sure I'll do other posts that break this down even more. But ASL interpretation, I want to be able to secure that from the beginning. First, I'm an energy healer and I do divination, and this event is going to be centered around divination. And that is a language in and of itself. It's not just English, right? And so when we bring in ASL interpretation, there's yet another language that we have to account for. And so I don't we can't just slap that on as, just show up and do it. Like, I really want to be able to find the right interpreters. I want to talk about, how that kind of collaboration will work on Zoom. I want to get, an assistant in there to help with the tech kind of stuff and the logistics, and that's going to take time. And we need to start working on this on October because by the time it gets to November, we're already in Mercury retrograde, and no thanks, right? We need this to come in now. Um, and being able to resource ourselves with that spaciousness makes all the difference for me and for, someone who's experiencing the event. It'll go so much more smoothly. Um, and then yeah, this support team. When I bring in people on my support staff or, my support team, my collaborators, that are going to help me, in my private life to make, things, so physical health support, I've been doing a lot of like physical health recovery stuff. So that's something I need to do as an accessibility issue in my personal life to be able to show up online and at an event and be my best self. So I'll talk about, these particular roles more later. But the basic, um, principle around how much I want to raise to resource these folks, even for just 2 months, is this principle: work less, get paid more, a disabled parable. So you know, this whole artist grant system, it's not just about money, it's about take how we can use money to take us back into village principles, thriving village principles. So here we have our first principle. We're building village practices to pay your friends the things that they would do for free so that they can spend less time doing things that they don't want to do for money. Okay? That's the principle. Pay, let's figure out how we can pay each other to do the things that we would do for free anyway, so we can spend less time doing things that we don't want to do for money. Okay? Um, and so that means my job then is to show up here to my village and not play small, right? Not be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like I just need like just need the bare minimum." Like I not do that, but instead say, "Hey, I'm asking to be generous. Whatever that is for you. No judgment, but please be generous. Please do that stretch, so that I can offer myself more support and then I can pay people higher rates for less work, right? So if I pay someone a four-digit number to work with me 4 hours a month, who does phenomenal work, if someone's, uh doing body work for me twice a month for 2 hours, 4 hours, and they get enough to really, they're not worried about paying their bills. They have a four-figure amount from that. Then they have more time to build community services, to run, small businesses that might not be fully sustainable yet. More time to rest, to play, to dream, to strategize. More time to respond to relationships from a grounded place. More support to respond to unexpected events or emergencies. And so by doing this, you're then funding, you're then contributing to public funding, right? So then that person who was getting paid a lot of money for a little bit of work now has that extra funds to build their public library, build their mystery school, build their radical program, their small business, their healing work, and their activist contributions. Okay. Um, so folks who offer something in this pot between now and October 17th. So I'm trying to get this rapid fire. And so my plan over the next, few days will be to get this in front of a few people who have a megaphone, right? I have a smaller following right now, so I'm going to try and reach people who have a bigger following, who can amplify this, and who will really believe in this vision. And can I find those 500 people or equivalent, right? And so anyone who offers something during this period, this is how we sweeten the pot, will get access to another investors appreciation event along with this trans livelihood event, a Q&A with our disabled ancestors. So this is, as a channel, as a diviner, as an ancestral communicator, I can get on with this group and, ask me your questions about ancestor healing. Ask me your questions about this, intersection of disability, justice, and ancestor healing, especially all the ableism that exists in the spiritual community, right? Let's have a time to heal from that. Let's do, I can channel some messages from disabled ancestors. What do they have to tell us? I can help you connect with your ancestor in that portal, with a disabled ancestor in your portal. I can do some live readings during that event, or just, answer your questions. So that's going to be available in January 2026. So that's the incentive. So that's a way of when you invest in public funding, you get a direct return. Okay. So here is how this system addresses this big problem that we have right now, which is overwhelm. It's overwhelming, the amount of people who are putting out, GoFundMe campaigns who need money, let alone the millions of people who actually need mutual aid, who aren't asking for it. There's millions of more, right? And there's millions of people sharing their services. There's millions of people promoting their businesses. There's millions of people, like, let me get my writing out there on Substack. Let me, promote myself. People are doing really incredibly heartfelt research, incredibly heartfelt storytelling. And we're at an all-time low when it comes to, attention span and able to like sit with people and their medicine, an all-time low when it comes to people signing up for stuff. Everyone is too exhausted. Everyone is too overwhelmed. And we can't solve that problem overnight. But this system, one of the big gifts of it is that it really helps us organize that overwhelm in ways that welcomes more and more people into a state of genuine rest, listening, clarity, openness, because we have the support in our individual lives to actually move slower and listen more and connect more. So, how I see this, one of the powerful ways that we can do this is by organizing ourselves through these money moving workshops by bodies of wisdom in development. So, this is a body of wisdom in development, ancestor healing and disability justice. Another body of wisdom in development is the alchemy of sexual healing and ancestor healing, especially for survivors. That's what I mean when I'm talking about quality daddy time, right? Um, Now, this is something that I've been working on. I have a big public library and apothecary of storytelling medicine on this theme that a lot of it I haven't published. But say next year, I want to create a village grant on this topic because it's close to my heart. And so we partner with someone with a big audience, right? And at that point, I might have more people following this project as well. Or, I partner with someone who is already doing this work. And so we reach more people who are interested in this topic. And so let's say, we have 2,000 people who are interested in one event around this topic, in a really beautiful event. And it's probably a lot more than 2,000 people. We generate a village artist grant through that field of generosity, and we get a six-figure number because of that easily. And so through that six figures, then what we can do through the money moving workshop, I also put out my own system of how people can go through my portal to partner with me or to receive a grant from me, which is what I'm doing in this first phase as well. And so through that, I find, okay, amongst that six-figure grant, some of it's going to go to funding my public library. Then I can create some study grants for people who want to study my public library and create, content on their channel about that. And so that helps me promote my work. They also get paid to study and listen. Um, And then I partner with a healer who is running a 12-week program on this topic, but they're kind of struggling because they're not getting enough people signing up for their things to like cover all their bills. So we support their base income and we give them a little extra so some people can have scholarships for that program. Um, and then we have, a couple people who are like, "Oh, you're doing this sexual healing coaching and you're working with clients. Let's get you, a couple grants." No, like four figure, you could 5,000, 10,000, grants, right? Um, and then we have, oh my gosh, there's this amazing film and theater project on this topic. Um, and they actually have been doing their own fundraising, so they contribute some to this pot. And we really hit it off and we become, collaborators and we create, a little series where we get on YouTube and we talk about this theme. And then we have a little nest egg here for guests. So we can say, let's bring in this guest. We'll have a little roundtable conversation. We'll have a lot of people, listening on a deep, let's go deeper onto this topic. Then we bring, money toward two people who have been doing fundraising for communities surviving genocide, because that is a issue of sexual healing. If you didn't already know that sexual violence is a fundamental tenet of military violence. So we offer support not just to the communities who are surviving, but to organizers who are raising money for that issue. Okay. So we're not just we're actually resourcing the work that it takes to consistently respond to crises that are happening, over the, around the world. Okay? So that those organizers are not getting burnt out. And then we have someone who's getting out of an abusive relationship and they can't publicly ask for money. They can't do a GoFundMe. They can't. It's an abusive relationship. But they connect with me through seeing this body of wisdom and development. And they're like, I have this fundraising campaign and we fill it. We fulfill their anonymous GoFundMe in one swell swoop. So they're not out there trying to get, screaming into the void, asking for individual donations. And then we have maybe some spiritual entrepreneurs who are doing really well right now, who have made, found financial success and they have an overflow and they're like, I really want to learn about this topic. I'm invested in it. I need to go deeper into my own studies. Let me offer a good chunk of my overflow. Let me become an executive producer. So that means you have an investment in this body of wisdom and you're getting a return by putting in a certain number into the pot that helps the whole grant as a whole. So obviously, we start small, okay? Because work less, get paid more. We want to work spaciously, we want to work restfully, we want to work playfully, we want to work joyfully. And so we start small. Um, but as we do grow, we can build more full-time jobs for more support staff to organize all of these things. And then maybe we pay a few people to organize a regular farmers market on this topic. So that could look like, let's send out a weekly roundup email, maybe every couple months. We meet on Zoom, everyone who's working on this topic, interested in this topic. So you get less emails in your inbox because less individual people are sending you emails, but you have this topic that you're interested in that you can look at regularly. And people can get their work promoted without having to like hustle so hard on these apps. You don't have to maybe be on social media that much. You don't have to send out a lot of emails because you can weave in and plug into one of these bodies of wisdom and development. And so everyone who's doing this, right? We're really bringing in wise counsel. We're bringing peer support. We're bringing in elders. We're building intentional protocols and practices and relationship skills around how do we create this? How do we do this? Right? Like exchanging money is loaded. How do we do this with consent, with safety, with trust? It's not to pretend that we can do this without any issues coming up. But the point is, we always go back to village principles, and that is our real wealth. We allow this to teach us more about village principles and practice them. And that is where our real wealth is right now. And by the way, while this one event was happening, right, of these 2,000 people, then there's like a bunch of other people here, right, who are like, you know what, I'm studying this model. I'm learning from it. I'm applying it to my own situation. I'm taking this kind of village grant art system and I'm bringing it over here to these folks, to this community. Maybe some people are like, let me try this out with my three-person friend circle. So we have multiple places where this kind of funding is being generated where this kind of money is being circulated at the same time. I'm not, paying attention to all of it. That's what I mean by this movement is supposed to spread. And then we can come in every once in a while and compare notes. What's going on? Like, what are we learning? What are we learning? What were the lessons? What were the failures? What were the wins? Okay. Okay. So now here's the juicy part. I am a multiverse memoir creator. And so basically what I do is I look into the timeline and to see, well, what happens if we win and what happens if we lose? What do we win and what do we lose in a system like this? Or if we don't have a system like this? So I'm going to take you through some real life examples, and we're going to actually talk about there's a lot of deep heartbreak and conflict. When I talked to you at the beginning about like we're going to talk about how money impacts friendships, impacts liberation movements, impacts intimacy. So, there's no details of abuse, but we're going to talk about, themes of abuse. Um, themes of like really loaded conflict where there isn't necessarily a very clear who's right and who's wrong, even though you might have your own opinion about that. So we're going to talk about that in these, we're going to see that unfold in these two multiverse timelines. Um, and I want to be clear that these examples, they're not of people in my real life, so I'm not telling people's business right here. I genuinely made it up. However, in saying none of this actually happened, all of it is actually happening all the time. You know what I mean? You will when you see. Because when I saw these stories, when these stories came out of me, I was like, I feel it as if I do know these people, you know? Okay, so let's go into the first one. Person A. So this timeline is what happens if Shaunga gave up? And Shaunga meaning me. What if she gave up and she never did this in the first place? What if I switched directions sometime in the last 2 years because I honestly, didn't have the support I needed to really do this research. And that took a toll on me, and I did it anyway, right? There's something that's literally what I was saying. There's some things that you just have to bite the bullet and do it. I didn't have, my back was up against the wall in so many ways. I just had to do it. Um, but maybe I didn't. Maybe in this timeline, I said, you know what? I'm going to prioritize my boundaries. I'm going to, not do this. I'm going to go and do something else with my time. And yeah, maybe Shanga disappeared and nobody knows what happened to her. Um, and so person A would have otherwise been someone, on over here, my support staff, let's say, not actual real person again, but maybe let's say that in this timeline they would have been this wise counsel. But here, maybe we never met. Okay, so who is this person? Person A, someone who provides a lot of free spiritual education on social media. Very trusted spiritual healer. But even in this climate, money is tough. She maybe has a big following, but not a lot of people are investing right now. She has some money coming through Patreon, and she's actually really excited to have earned income, like some sweet income via Substack this year, but it's nowhere near enough to pay her bills. She has a long-term partner. This is person B, who has a corporate job, and she's mostly financially dependent on this person, on her partner. And they had a great relationship to begin with. Long time, sweethearts. And at the beginning was great, but her partner has become more and more unsupportive of her since she went deeper into her healing journey and more into her ancestral power. And this is so common, right? You're in a relationship and it's great, but then you go into your deeper healing journey, especially an ancestor healing journey, and partnership doesn't feel so good anymore. And person B is probably carrying a lot of stigma and distrust of ancestor healing, and they're unwilling to invest in their own healing journey after a certain point. And this is a constant, thing of contention between them. But person B is also in a tough spot. They're a trans person with a good corporate job, which is like, I'm hanging on to that good corporate job. And they can't get off the hamster wheel. And they're like, you know what? Like, I can't stop working. Like, I literally financially provide for you and for both of us. And they're, a very generous person. They give a lot, to movement work, to mutual aid, but they can't stop working and they can't go too deep into their healing because of that. And a lot of issues are coming up that they can't address, and it's impacting their relationship. And so their partnership gets worse. Person B drinks a lot to cope with the stress at work and being in this corporate environment and gets really mean to their partner when they're drunk. She wants to move, person A. She doesn't feel safe anymore in her relationship, especially around the drinking. Um, but she doesn't have the money. And she can't do mutual aid, right? She's trying really hard to get more Substack money, but she's actually really successful, but she can't even enjoy her success because she's like, I just need more to get out of this relationship. And yeah, she can't do mutual aid because if her partner knew that she was planning to leave, then they'd retaliate against her. There's some dynamics going on there, right? So she tries to do an anonymous GoFundMe campaign, but it doesn't work because she can't share a lot of details about herself. Nobody's inspired to give. And her crisis isn't the worst kind of crisis. So it's not getting much attention. It's actually not that bad, her situation, like it's not that bad. It's fine. Mostly it's just only bad when they're drinking. So she kind of lives in it. She endures. She has this like low level anxiety all the time, but she just like kind of focuses on her spiritual work, trying to do client work, trying to put out, content, but her home environment isn't safe. And there's a limit to how much a healer can do for her community. If your home environment isn't safe, it's really, really important. But he's constantly critical of her. It's hard to work at home. He makes fun of her and her clients. He does like all these like little jabs, and she internalizes this, and it impacts her practice. And years go by like this, years, until it finally blows up, until it finally gets really bad. It gets really abusive, and she gets out, and now she's fine. She's protected, her ancestors got her back. She finds her way back to life and healing. But in those years, she could have been happier. She could have been supported. We as a village didn't have to wait until things got really bad to support her. There were potential clients, so many potential clients who needed her during that time and never found her. And some of them got lost in grief without adequate support. Some are in major relationship conflict because they don't have spiritual tools that they could have learned from her. Eventually, everyone, finds what they need. But it took so much longer and so much got lost along the way. In our village artist grant system, person A plugs in right away to this body of wisdom and development. Maybe she's that person with that GoFundMe when I do that topic next year. And she receives village funding from this pot and this body of wisdom. She reached out through my portal and went through that process so that she could weave herself in anonymously. And in giving back to our garden in this body of wisdom, she offered workshops and storytelling circles to our network, and she was able to express herself freely, and she didn't have to promote herself publicly. And she found amazing clients, students, and collaborators that healed her heart. She accessed village funding while growing her platform, and she found her feet more quickly. And in this scenario, person A and person B, they did end up breaking up before it got really bad, and they're not in contact anymore. But they both feel a lot of gratitude and love for their time together. Neither of them have to hold the trauma and grief of the reality of abuse between them because it never happened. Years later, this village artist grant system is thriving, and now it's possible for many folks to receive full-time income just for the integrity of their healing journey, just for investing in the integrity of their healing journey. And at this point, person B feels safe enough to quit their corporate job and focus on their healing because that work is now collectively supported. See how that made me emotional? Okay. Now, lastly, we're going to talk about this next timeline. This is a timeline like, okay, maybe the next 2 months go by. And maybe it doesn't work. Maybe we collectively decide that this village artist grant system is too complicated, Shanga. It's too confusing. It's too messy. It's like maybe not too, it's like I get it in theory, but it would never work. People aren't like that. It is too messy to try and figure out all these things, dynamics between us. Good idea, Shanga. You're an amazing idea. You're an amazing idea generator. We love your big ideas, Shanga, but no thanks. It's actually easy to just focus on whatever we were doing before because we know what that is. We know how to buy and sell. It's easier to apply for grants. Yeah, whatever. We hate it, but at least we know it. Fair enough. Okay. So person C is an incredible liberation-oriented, ancestor-guided artist and community worker. And they're like, yeah, maybe I'll see, maybe I'll see what Sean is talking about here, Village Artist Grant. Nah, I'll just focus on getting grants because maybe they would have really loved doing this, but the community wasn't gathering around them in this way. Okay, they're just going to focus on getting grants. They're really good at getting grants. They have grant after grant after grant after grant. They're on it, they're on it, they're on it. They're super successful. And people think they're thriving because they're always getting grants, but they don't actually show how much they're struggling because no matter how successful they are in this granting system, it's never enough to cover everything. Never enough. And they're barely surviving from month to month. And they're terrified of what would happen if some emergency came along, financial emergency. But finally, one day they get a massive grant from a major government funding body. It's a lifesaver because this person C is in a queer relationship and they've been spending a lot of money trying to get pregnant with their partner, who they can't get pregnant naturally with each other. Um, and so they've been putting a lot of money into trying to get pregnant because person C is like, I feel like that is an experience I need to have in my body. I need to give birth. And, some people feel like that's their calling, right? And it's been their biggest heartbreak that year after year after year, after so much money being put into this, like it's so hard to get pregnant. And then they finally do. Okay. And so it's a huge win and a celebration. And all of their, person C's friends have seen them through this. They know how important this is to them. And they know how important financial wellness is even more of a priority. It's like, you know what? Fuck all the bullshit. When you have that kind of responsibility, you're like less likely. You don't want to do all the people pleasing things. You're like, yeah, I gotta make sure I'm financially good. Okay, so they did get this massive grant, and it was a beautiful. They wrote person C and their creative partner, person D, wrote a grant together for this beautiful community project that was just such a beautiful combination of their medicine. And this is a longtime friend and beloved creative partner, person D. Person D makes a statement at one of their events, openly criticizing is not real and criticizing anyone with ties to the genocide and occupation, and made a really strong statement. Didn't really think about it. Um, and their funder was in the audience. Okay, and so if you trace this funding, it goes back to the government funding. And the government, which of course has a stake in is not real, continuing to do what it's doing. Okay, that caused problems. Now the funder is not happy about that. And now this relationship between person C and their funder is there's maybe a little dynamic between person C and person C is the one who ends up having to do like all the conflict resolution and all that kind of stuff with their funder. And she's like she's maybe the more diplomatic one, so she knows kind of how to, play the game. She's doing a lot of free education. Like she's just like, we cannot lose this grant. We cannot get written out of this funding. And she's been doing so much work around that, unpaid work, and she's exhausted, she's drained, she's resentful, she's not showing up in her relationships as her best self. All of her energy is going toward just keeping this funding. And now person C is resentful at her partner, person D, and says, you should have asked me before you said something like that. And now person D is pissed off. I'm not going to ask you for permission to speak up against genocide. And now it's personal. You have been my friend for all these years, and I'm trying to get pregnant, and I have to protect my funding. My livelihood depends on that, and you know that. Meanwhile, person D has been doxxed. They've been fired for their activism, for specifically for speaking up for watermelon. They can't find work because of this activism. Now they're taking it personally. Okay, person D is like, you seen me through all this shit. My livelihood depends on speaking out. And they have a huge blowout. Finally, in the middle of the fight, person D says something that they can't take back. Your pregnancy is not as important as what's happening in the world. And person C is like, you know what? Fair enough. We're done. See, there's no accountability process for saying that to me. We're done. Both are devastated, filled with grief and rage and things that they can't take back. Years go by. They both move on. Person D is still holding on to so much guilt for what they said, but also anger. And sometimes, they never really got over the loss of this relationship. And person C also feels guilty. Like, you were right. Like, I did put my relationship with my funders over you. And I also do it again for my kid. So they do end up having this beautiful kid. And it's like, this kid is the love of my life. No regrets. But also, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this. It's a dead end. So I just let it go. And I carry this quiet sorrow with me that never really goes away. And eventually they repair a little bit, um, at least to be cordial with one another. They kind of come to they have a little talk, after many years, water under the bridge type of thing. Their kid is 7 at this point, but person C never introduces their kid to person D. And that's a grief that person D has to carry because they really wanted to be an auntie. And they're never going to get to be an auntie to this kid. Over the years, person C, after all that, loses their ability to live off of grant money. The bills and cuts to arts funding squeezes her out. And staying silent on the genocide didn't help her at the end of the day. You know, she's going to lose that funding anyway. So she quietly leaves activism. She gets a job in academia, but she's unhappy in her job, but she doesn't care. She just like clocks in, clocks out. Her family is most important to her. And she's also always kind of anxious because she knows that academia is like not actually stable. It's going to collapse. In a village artist grant. So I know everyone has a lot of feelings about that, right? But let's actually pause because I'm not going to ask you to dissect who was right or wrong because we don't actually have to do that. Now, do we? In a village artist grant system, none of this is a dead end. We have a system designed to resource both person C and person D in their needs. It's designed to resource our revolutionary projects, us. So we don't have to depend on them. So we don't have to rely so much on those funding bodies. We have the freedom to run our projects with integrity and speak freely. And instead of those 7 years they spent apart, instead they spend those 7 years running this project beautifully together. That conflict never comes between them. And through these 7 years, they supported millions of people, which created a ripple effect and made enormous positive change in the world. And in the other funding model, they originally visioned and organized this project as a 3-year project because that's what they had to do to get the grant money, right? Also, that project kind of fell apart because it was organized according to this nonprofit kind of way, nonprofit kind of structure that made sure that they could get the grant. But when they didn't have to do that, when it was like, actually, why don't you organize it according to your own integrity? Oh, it's a whole 7 year process because we're moving slower, because we're giving time for more integration, because we're actually supporting ourselves more deeply. And that's also why we didn't run into conflict, because we had the time to really listen to one another. And any potential conflict, we put money on that so we could work it out before it got really bad. So this and it also is what creates this ripple effect into the world of incredible healing. With village funding, they had the freedom to grow this project as if it were a child, to really understand that it has a life of its own, that you listen to and nurture and steward. But most importantly, the village protected a friendship that would have otherwise fallen apart. Because in the other paradigm, this system pitted them against each other. And both of them, I wrote down neither of them had a choice in how they responded. That's not true. They had choices, but both of their backs were up against a wall. And that's the truth. And that's how it pitted them against each other. These two beautiful friends. Maybe maybe one was indigenous, one was a black person. So both from, communities surviving genocide in different ways and needing to survive in different ways. And this pits those two people, those two friends against one another. But here in this timeline, we have two friends who spent years together creating and learning. And eventually, after that 7 year period, they create a hit podcast. And it's just about them showing up and talking about their friendship. And they call that podcast Friendship That Withstands the Revolution. A friendship that can withstand the revolution. Which, by the way, I'm going to shout out to my two friends because we came up with that title the other day for one of our projects. So I'm not gonna claim complete authorship over that name, but they create this hit podcast. And in that time they partner with really radical revolutionary p folks who are in tech. And in that time, many of us create our own channels and subscriptions and our own places on the web. Um, and we have millions of subscribers to, our TV shows and our, journalism schools and documentaries and music albums. And millions of people don't subscribe to Disney, don't subscribe to Netflix, don't subscribe to any of that. And there's millions of people subscribing to this podcast where these two friends are talking about their friendship. And and that kind of reality TV for the revolution, people are getting healed by that kind of reality TV instead of watching another season of Love is Blind on Netflix, which I'm going to do later tonight. And scene. Right? See, these timelines just hit me so deeply, as if I know them. And this is where I am as like a multiverse historian and a channeler and ancestral healer. I'm an energy healer. I feel those timelines. I feel the timeline where we win. I feel the timeline where we lose. I feel who is there. I feel what happens. I feel that heartbreak. I feel that abusive relationship. I feel the sadness that you can never heal from. And I feel the miracle. I feel that podcast. I feel the people who break up in the first timeline with peace. We're not right for each other. Let's just go. That part. And one of the bodies of wisdom and development that I have going on is this idea of fictional characters as our ancestors. And so I work with fictional characters as ancestors. And I just took you through an example of that without telling you that that's what I was doing. These are two fictional characters. I don't know who they are. I don't know these stories, but I know them, right? I know them as ancestors. I feel them. And I think a lot of people listening to this feel this too. You feel them. Okay, so that's what I got for this open classroom today. That was a good one, right? What happens when we lose? What happens when we win? Now, tomorrow, or whenever I get around to it, as soon as I can, I'm gonna put out like an official call out for this accessibility front funding so that we can do this for the first time in this particular way on this cat channel. Um, But yeah, I am going to drop the PayPal link and the link to the free medicine bundle and the entry portal in the link as well. So if you're one of those people who are like an early nerd and you want to get in right away, I really appreciate that. Otherwise, I'm gonna do my best to get this done by October 17th, get this access funding. Okay? So yeah, follow me in all the places and I'll see you next time. Peace. It's the awkward moment where I search for the end record. Okay. Bye.